Ladies and gentlemen, I do not want to waste your time. We just had our Wi-Fi get cut out, so we were about 2 rounds in this $250 fantasy football draft, and now I'm having to catch you up with what just happened. Yes, it is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful start. Through the first 2 rounds, we got lucky enough to pull Derrick Henry at pick 10, Najee Harris at 15. Obviously, if you're not used to drafting on Underdog, probably you're very surprised to see Derrick Henry there at pick 10. But on Underdog, Derrick Henry has an ADP at pick 9. This does happen relatively often. Najee Harris at 15, though, to get both these players in the same roster is a little bit unique. Not on top of it. And on top of it, we are getting Keenan Allen 34. Keenan Allen, who I've ranked as a top 10 wide receiver. We're getting Travis Etienne at the beginning of the 4th round. We almost decided to instead go Jalen Waddle there, but felt like given the fact that we were able to go through and take Keenan Allen in the 3rd, it's not like we had to reach on those wide receivers because keep in mind on Underdog, you have to go through and draft 3 of these guys. They are going to get pushed up draft boards, but of course, if you want to get into our next draft, if you want to maybe get in a $3 draft with us, a $5 draft with us, doesn't have to be a $250 draft. Make sure you go to the link in the description, the link in the live chat. It will take you to Underdog Fantasy where you can draft best ball leagues with your friends in the public lobby with us in the live stream. We do this every single night. And when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You'll get our 2022 fantasy football rankings and our 2022 fantasy football draft guide. Yes, with a $10 deposit on Underdog that they match. So it's essentially free for you. You get a 300-page draft guide. We did everything we could to set up that sponsorship with y'all. Trying to get you our draft guide for the cheapest cost possible. Make sure you take advantage of that. And for everybody coming back out to the live chat, I am so sorry that last live stream got shut down. Very, very sorry. I don't know what happened. But we have Jalen Hurts going here before Lamar Jackson going, before Patrick Mahomes as well. I'm assuming this is the team. Yeah, they decided to take A.J. Brown there, pick 24. A very unique start, of course. A very unique start. And Carlos says this is a private draft with the 250. This is the $250 draft. And yes, I love the start that we have. And if y'all were not out last night, I do have to remind everyone, we had the grossest $250 draft that you would ever see. Ever see yesterday. Like, it was just absolutely disgusting. We're back to avenge ourselves. I think we've done a great job so far through the first 4 rounds. But Bobcat coming out, thank you, my friend, says, would you ever consider doing a series rating Dynasty teams, maybe a weekly series? You could determine whether the teams are contending or rebuilding. You could give feedback on what trades to make. Yeah, I've done that for a very long time. Like, we made Dynasty videos like that for almost over 2 years, like dating back to 2019, we were doing that. Definitely something I can look to do more of in the future if you would be interested with that, my friend. Okay, so A.J. Dillon off the board at 54. Now, one thing that made our $250 draft go off the rails yesterday is we did end up getting Cam Akers, making it to us a big 58. We kind of panicked, and we decided to draft Cam Akers. Don't necessarily think that we'll panic in that fashion now as we see Cam Akers off the board at 56. And y'all know how much I love Deontay Johnson. You know how much I love Deontay Johnson. To get Deontay on this team would be an absolute no-brainer. I love Kittle as well, but in reality, Kittle's not nearly as exciting. When we needed another wide receiver, we only had Keenan Allen up until this point. So now that we're getting Deontay Johnson at 58, I'm very excited with our decision to go through and decide to pass on Jalen Waddle in the last round in favor of Travis Etienne, because Deontay Johnson at 58 is just a no-brainer in my opinion. Dre coming out says Kadarius Toney is going to go nuclear, and those other wide receivers will get 8 to 10 a game while the quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends boss up. Can you say tournament championship? That's what we're hoping for. I mean, that's what we're hoping for. Saram says, sorry, mate, but I think the stream froze before my question. Okay, I'm very sorry, Saram. What I was saying with that question is going back to the league format you're playing in. If you're playing in a league where you truly only start 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, and a flex, in that format in particular, hell, we need another wide receiver. Give me 6th-round Brandon Cooks. Thank you. But in that format in particular, we are going to be looking at the wide receiver position as a position that, honestly, just doesn't matter. Like, you can go through and you can punt that spot. So I would be looking to go running back there on the turn, especially if you can get, say, Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones. I mean, in that format, though, I would love bringing in a Travis Kelce. Just, it's very difficult to go through and put an elite price tag on the wide receivers in particular. Okay. So now we have Drake London 65. Let me know what y'all think of this team so far, my friends. But I think that this is one of the better teams that we've had. Now, of course, we still need to have some tight ends. We need some quarterbacks as well. And if we're going to be looking at quarterbacks we could add to this team, maybe this would be a spot to add 18th round Kenny Pickett if we really wanted a unique combo at the very end. Also, we would get that double stack in there with a combination of Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson. Maybe we just go through and bet that all of a sudden Kenny Pickett can come out and be a very good rookie quarterback. And outside of that, I don't exactly know what we're looking for. I mean, maybe at quarterback we could be going with a Lawrence. I have no interest in 18th round Davis Mills. Like, I think that the ceiling with Pickett is honestly going to be higher than the ceiling with Davis Mills. So Elijah Moore off the board here, pick 68. Dalton Schultz a little bit early here as well, like we saw in the other draft. Okay. Scary Hours coming out saying something. I have no idea what they're talking about. So Elijah Mitchell, pick 70, a very nice value on Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell in this draft going behind Tony Pollard, which is very interesting. I mean, like I said, I think Pollard's more intriguing now that you have the injuries to the wide receivers there in Dallas, but still getting Elijah Mitchell 70, getting David Montgomery 71. Like, I really want to go through and track LOL Hot Dogs team here. Look at this start that they've had through the first 6 rounds. An extremely interesting build where they go through, they get Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Breece Hall, and David Montgomery at running back. So an elite running back core. And they're coming away with the combo at tight end of Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. I mean, this is similar to what we did in the last draft, taking our first wide receiver in the 7th. But in reality, in that last draft that we messed up, I feel like we didn't get as good a value as this. Like, I felt like they almost had no other option but to draft the way that they did with the value that presented itself. And getting Adam Thielen here at pick 74, I love this team from LOL Hot Dogs. I mean, at this point, you assume that they draft 10 wide receivers with the build, what makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's go through and move this down. Saram says, thank you. Now that Kamara may be very likely to play this season, would you put him ahead of Jones, Swift, or Saquon Barkley? We moved him into that same tier, so I think if you wanted to draft Alvin Kamara over those guys, you could. And yes, it does look very likely that Alvin Kamara doesn't miss any time this upcoming season, but I do think it's in the range of outcomes that is something that happens. So personally, I'm still going to be taking those other running backs ahead of Kamara, especially for projecting the target share probably a little bit lower than it's been in years past when you have Michael Thomas healthy, when you have Chris Olave added in, when you also have Jarvis Landry there as well. So I probably would lean with like a Saquon Barkley and Aaron Jones and a DeAndre Swift over Alvin Kamara, but we put them in the same tier now that we have that news with Kamara. I mean, I think we did that on our last rankings video. If not, it was a mistake, but I'm 99% sure we did. Johnny coming out says, I love the start. All uphill after last night. 0.01% chance it's a winner. It's a great day when the flock comes together for another live stream. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you being out here. And yes, only uphill from the draft that we had yesterday. But very interesting that we are seeing that teams across the board here are deciding to push up those elite level quarterbacks. I mean, you have Tom Brady going before ADP. You had at the same time Lance going before ADP. You had Jalen Hurts going before ADP. Russell Wilson going before ADP. So maybe hard to find a quarterback that we like at a value here. We do need to keep that in mind. So what's the report that we have with Lazard not playing today? Kadarius Toney won't play preseason week 2. Please let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the live chat right now. Am I crazy? Or did we used to have more players on the field at this time when we were this close to the season? I feel like we had more action. I feel like the preseason games were better. Now, it still was fun watching the first few preseason games, getting the music between the commercial breaks, like obviously having that football feel. But I don't know why. It just doesn't necessarily feel the exact same. Okay. Awaz says, you're definitely going crazy. Justin says that I'm not crazy. Steve says I'm not crazy. I don't know. We go Josh Jacobs here at pick 82. You give me Josh Jacobs at the end of the 7th round. I take Josh Jacobs at the end of the 7th round. I'm no rocket scientist, but I think that's something that we have to do. And then Dameon Pierce, pick 85. Very interesting to get Dameon Pierce here before Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire goes pick 86. I don't love Hunter Renfrow, but we do bet on the Las Vegas Raiders offense, I guess, with that Josh Jacobs selection. Let's go through. Let's take Renfrow here as well when we kind of need another wide receiver. I mean, at running back, we are already so set. Of course, remember on Underdog, you do have to start 3 wide receivers, so it is going to be a little bit of a different build that we are looking at where we have to prioritize going out of our way and grabbing wide receivers while we still can. So even if I prefer to have Miles Sanders in a vacuum, and if you say, go get my 2022 fantasy football draft guide, a draft guide's not going to be for Underdog. That's just going to be for your regular casual fantasy football league. And there, I am going to prefer to go through and draft someone like Miles Sanders over Renfrow. But I think in this format, we kind of have to just take the wide receiver. But at running back, look at this squad. We have Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, and I feel like we got them at strong values as well. Wide receiver, I mean, we have some target hogs with Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks. We have someone that's going to give us a high floor probably with Hunter Renfrow. Obviously not going to be that exciting outside of a Darren Waller or Devontae Adams injury, though. Okay, Colin coming out. Thank you, my friend. Says, got my draft order today. Number 2 spot. CMC, Jefferson, or Cup, full PPR, big money, and bragging rights at work. Okay, I would say probably the bragging rights at work are what matters the most. But in my opinion, you have to go Christian McCaffrey. Now, I find myself very similar to like the Derrick Henry stance, where I feel like when we talk about Derrick Henry, there are going to be the casual fantasy football drafters that tell me I'm an idiot, that Derrick Henry can't be ranked at 8, that Derrick Henry has to be the second player off boards. And I'm like, okay, no, I think Derrick Henry has some serious red flags we need to be on the lookout for. And then you have like the advanced analytics drafters, just the pure metric nerds that are saying, oh, Derrick Henry is a 2nd round pick from a roster construction standpoint with these red flags. I'm like, no, Derrick Henry has a crap ton of upside. Like I found myself kind of in between those two crowds. Same thing with Christian McCaffrey. With Christian McCaffrey, the metrics, the analytic nerds are telling you injuries are completely random. Draft Christian McCaffrey at pick 1. And then the casual fantasy football players are saying, I could never draft Christian McCaffrey in the top 5 picks because his injury is. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think with CMC, probably shouldn't have taken him over Jonathan Taylor. But given that elite level upside that he does have, I think you do have to go CMC at pick 2 when you get the chance. So Rom coming out with another donation. Of course, my man, you know how much I appreciate you. Says, sorry, but would you suggest going for someone like A.J. Brown and Jalen Waddle at the 3-4 turn after going back-to-back running backs? There's some good alternative options such as Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, J.K. Dobbins, etc. Thank you as always. No, thank you so much, my friend. I'd say 100%. If you can come away with A.J. Brown and Jalen Waddle at the 3-4 turn after starting back-to-back or running backs, it's going to be very exciting. Don't lock yourself into those 2 wide receivers immediately, though, because depending on how your league mates are going to value the running back position, you may end up getting a wide receiver that you like even more falling to you than Jalen Waddle. But A.J. Brown at the end of the 3rd, regardless of the format, is pretty much going to be an auto pick. Okay. So now we have James Cook off the board, pick 100. I think we can take a 5th running back. Like, it was very difficult for us to go through and say, take a 5th running back if we would have had to take Miles Sanders over someone like Hunter Renfrow. But now that we have a lot of these wide receivers like Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Marquez Valdez-Scantling off the board, the wide receiver position is drying up, where if we wanted to go with the running back in this range, we probably could. There are a few different names I'm looking at. Aaron Rodgers goes 113, so we continue to see these quarterbacks pushed up draft boards. Zach Ertz, 104. I can't say too much because $250 draft, and I don't know who's watching this live stream, but this is going to be the easiest pick I ever make in my entire life. We're going to go through, we're going to take TJ Hawkinson at 106. I mean, we need a tight end. We're getting him 16 picks behind his ADP. I think TJ Hawkinson, yes, technically from an ADP standpoint, he does fall in line with the mid-range tight ends that we want to be generally avoiding, but I do think that he's a little bit of an outlier and that he does have a pretty high ceiling at the same time. Okay, so Stafford 107. Do we reach on a car here? Probably not. The thing is, at what point are we just going to be screwed at quarterback? Let me just double check to make sure that there aren't any teams here that have gone out there and they've taken like 3 of these top quarterbacks in the same roster, really skewing the entire landscape. But no, you have the Herbert and Dak team together, the Mahomes and Rodgers team together, the Wilson and Stafford. But outside of that, you don't have a team going through and taking like a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, and an Aaron Rodgers where we really need to be adjusting our quarterback values. So I think we can take Hawkinson here at 106, and then we're not going to be forced to go with the quarterback if we don't want to take Derek Carr at this point. I mean, we can go with them if we want, but we're not going to be forced with it. Julio Jones off the board here, 110. I think we probably have to go Kenneth Walker. Obviously, Kenneth Walker dealing with the hernia. Kenneth Walker should be pushed down draft boards ever so slightly, but still, I think we're looking at a running back profile that, historically speaking, you're never getting a running back with this level of athleticism, specifically size-adjusted athleticism with this draft capital in the 10th round of redraft leagues where we're drafting him as a low-end running back 3, high-end running back 4. Now, in our roster in particular, we are going to be taking him as a running back 5 here, and now we can no longer draft running backs. So far at running back, we have Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, and Kenneth Walker. At tight end, we have TJ Hawkinson. At wide receiver, we have Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, and Hunter Renfrow. So we are in a spot where we 100% are going to be chasing quarterback value. It's going to be very difficult for us to find quarterbacks that we're really excited about. But outside of that, I think we'll be fine. Hot Mike says, Mr. Steph says, Mason praying for some Rodgers value. And in reality, I'm not even praying for some Rodgers value because he's off the board at 103. We don't even have that option. Nick says, happy PPR 12-team auction. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 3 flex. Any advice? I'd say this is going to be a very shallow format, even with the 3 flex league. I would say let's go through. Let's pull in elite tight end. I'd be willing to overpay for them in the auction draft. And then beyond that, maybe 2 elite running backs. I would definitely be going studs and duds with this approach. I'd be willing to spend, say, 40% of my budget just on 2 players if we're able to come away with, say, like Travis Kelce and then a running back that you really like that's at least in tier 1 or tier 2. Okay. So we have Chase Claypool, 119. After we take Kenneth Walker here, what we really want to see is we want to see running backs off the board. And let's go through, let's check back on that team. My favorite team so far in this draft is the team at pick 2. Now, of course, they have a very unique build overall. They have CMC, Leonard Fournette, Breece Hall, David Montgomery so far at the running back position. At tight end, they have the elite level guy in Mark Andrews. They have at quarterback Lamar Jackson. They decided to just take Kirk Cousins as well. So this team is only going to be drafting, I'm assuming, wide receivers from here on out. Maybe they go through, they take 1 to 2 more tight ends, but this will be a 10 wide receiver build where they just try to take advantage of the volatility in a best ball format, which is going to be very hard to get away with. We tried to do it yesterday. I think our draft just fell apart. Like, our draft was horrendous, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I think that they are stronger across the board, essentially. I mean, maybe we had a better quarterback situation. We had a better tight end situation ever so slightly with like Josh Allen and Travis Kelce compared to Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, but still, I think their team is so much better. Now, Darrell Henderson, Isaiah Spiller off the board. Thank God, get these running backs. Take these running backs. Get them out of here. Let's see Rachaad White go. Rachaad White, God, okay, very, very good for us. Romeo Doubs, not necessarily a wide receiver that I was even going to be looking at here in the first place. Joshua Palmer, 128. So I think we are going to go through. We're going to take one of these top 2 wide receivers. Hopefully we even get like an Alexander Madison or a Kenneth Gainwell or an Albert O off the board. Any of those guys I'd be completely fine with. Russell Gage off. We are going to go ahead. We are going to take Mecole Hardman here for a best ball format. We are going to hope that we get some random spike weeks in line with Mecole Hardman. In terms of the quarterbacks we could be looking at this range, I mean, the best available quarterback is going to be Tua Tagovailoa, Trevor Lawrence. We could take Lawrence and we could get that stack up with Travis Etienne. In reality, the difference that Lawrence is going to have from a raw points per game output compared to some of the quarterbacks that I think we can just get later on, I'm not going to be that excited to go through and draft a Trevor Lawrence here. There are a couple different names I'd be looking at instead. So let's see what this team does on the clock. We're really hoping that we see an Alexander Madison pick. Kenneth Gainwell off the board there, 131, of course, is good for us. Nico Collins, 133. Okay, I think we have a plan A and a plan B if plan A doesn't work out. Fabian says DJ Chark. Yeah, DJ Chark's a wide receiver that I'm going to be completely fine going through and drafting if we are going to be looking at a league that doesn't have the fantasy football playoffs. Like if it's just cumulative scoring weeks 1 through 17, I do think that you should see a DJ Chark and his production front loaded when Jameson Williams is going to be out of this offense. But by the time Jameson Williams comes back, I do expect that DJ Chark's going to be taking that back seat for Williams. And then he's going to be competing for targets with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift. And when you have Jared Goff at quarterback, I don't necessarily think that's going to be enough for you. But let's go through. Let's recap our team so far. Now, of course, we are going to have to try to find quarterback value. We're going to have to draft 3 of these guys and hope that we can get them cycled through. Now, I don't know if you know one of the quarterbacks we're going to draft. I mean, you should know one of the quarterbacks we're going to draft if you've been watching us long enough. But so far with this build, at running back, we have Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Josh Jacobs, and Kenneth Walker. Love what we have at running back. Wide receiver, we have Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Hunter Renfrow, McCole Hardman, and Michael Gallup. Really like what we have at wide receiver. We have Hawkinson at tight end as well. I really like this team, guys. I really do. So Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, both off the board as expected. It looks like they don't necessarily go to teams that have a crap ton of quarterbacks. That is going to be something that's nice to see, that we're just getting these quarterbacks evenly dispersed, so we don't necessarily have to assume that these guys go, oh my gosh, you know what I just noticed? Brian Robinson and Tyler Algier here going before Alexander Madison in this draft. Very surprising, very surprising. And real quick, guys, if you have not dropped a like on the live stream yet, please go down there, drop a like on the stream. We had like 300 likes on the other stream before the Wi-Fi cut off, so please make sure you go down there, drop a like, try to save this in the YouTube algorithm if you can. You probably dropped a like on the last live stream, but not this one. Now we have Alexander Madison off the board, finally at pick 144. I even like what LOL Hot Dogs does here with Pat Frymeat at 143, locking in their second tight end and no longer going to be looking at any other position other than wide receiver, or at least I personally want it. I really like what they've done so far. So KJ Osborne goes pick 145. Okay. Dornage coming out says, a PPR keeper league. I have the 8th pick, keeping Justin Jefferson in the 13th. Diggs or Adams over Fournette, Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce, or Aaron Jones, in hope the second one comes back. Okay, so you're essentially asking, we have the 8th pick. We're going to be going back-to-back here at the 1-2 turn. And what combination of guys in Diggs, Devontae Adams, Leonard Fournette, Nick Chubb, Travis Kelce, and Aaron Jones? How I would rank these running backs is I would go Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette. How I would rank the wide receivers? Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. And if you're playing in a shallow redraft format, I honestly probably would prefer to take a Travis Kelce here at the 1-2 turn and then just kind of see what wide receiver or running back ends up making it back to you on the way back around. Okay. Atlas says Alexander Madison has terrible vision. My friend, Alexander Madison, on average, averages over 22 carries per game and averages over I believe 4 targets per game in games where Dalvin Cook misses. Do you need to know anything else? Do I need you to come out here and tell me about his hip swivel, his vision between the tackles? No, that's just nonsense. If we're going to be getting that kind of workload, it's going to be just distracting you from things that truly do really matter. Okay. So now we have Isaiah Pacheco, 151. Great for us. Great for us. So I think we probably go ahead and take a time. I don't want to say too much. But both these teams in front of us have 2 tight ends. This team right in front of us has George Kittle and Irv Smith Jr., so I'd assume that they're going to be done at tight end. They go Gesicki. That sucks for us. What's the news? Not spotted in warm-ups. Okay, that's a non-story there. Do we just go Galladay? We'll go Kenny Galladay. It is what it is. I know Galladay's been falling like a rock, and we need to be avoiding him where we can. We are getting him, 20 picks past ADP here. We want another wide receiver to bring in as our wide receiver 7. I think all these tight ends on the way back around are about the same. All these tight ends are about the same with Hunter Henry, Gerald Everett, David Njoku, Robert Tonyan. I don't care who we get here. I really don't care who we get here. Bobcat coming out. Thank you, my friend, says, What would I have to give up to get Trey Lance in a Dynasty Superflex 12-team PPR league? Also, why aren't you a big fan of Justin Fields? Okay, so if we're looking at Justin Fields versus Trey Lance, for example, that's why I'm not a big fan of Justin Fields, because you used to have to draft him before Trey Lance. I used to have to fight people who thought that Justin Fields was a better option than Lance. He didn't have the same draft capital. He didn't have the same situation. He didn't have the same level of rushing upside as a Trey Lance. So that's why I'm branded as an anti-Justin Fields guy, but I'm fine with Fields at this price point now that it's gone down so damn much. And Trey Lance, I've said this for a very long time. I do think that this is someone that you need to be valuing as a late round 1, early round 2 Dynasty startup pick in a 12-team Superflex Dynasty League. I've been saying it for 2 years now. Used to be able to get him in rounds 4, 5, and 6, which was ludicrous. I never drafted him there because I always took him in round 2 just so I didn't have to miss out on him. But if you want Lance in a 12-team Dynasty Superflex League, my friend, you're going to have to pay the price. Hear me roar coming out. Thank you, my friend. Let me see if I could find a message from you in the general chat. Just says, oops, I forgot my message. Let me know what your message was going to be. Thank you so much. So we go Hunter Henry here, pick 149 as our second tight end. I think paired up with TJ Hawkinson, we don't necessarily need to have another tight end now. We don't need to have that third guy. That's why we decided to go Kenny Golladay, pick 154 earlier, because I think if we're looking at Golladay at that price point, there is going to be a teardrop with the wide receivers, whereas at tight end, it's all the same. So we get Hunter Henry, who was probably the tight end that we were going to take regardless there. Even though I do have Robert Tonyan ranked like right before Hunter Henry, the reason we take Henry before him in this draft is because I'm going to be drafting 500, 600 teams this offseason. When I'm drafting that volume of teams, I'm already over 500. But when I'm drafting over that volume of teams, I do have to diversify ever so slightly. But Wan'Dale goes 166. Probably a good thing for us. At this point, we just need to make sure that we're getting quarterbacks on the way back around. Jay Geese says, $2,500 contest on Underdog. Are you doing it? Guys, I can't. I mean, if you think about it, I could either do 10 $250 drafts, or I could do one $2,500 draft. I did a $1,000 draft just for fun, for the video. And it was a lot of fun. Going to be my highest buy-in. Now, hell, maybe if we end up hitting like 90,000 subscribers on the season or something, and we do that like 24-hour live stream, then we could get something wild like that going. But as it stands now, I don't think I can do the $2,500 draft, guys. Trust me, I wish I could. It would be very, very good content, but probably not. Okay, let's swing this back around. Noah Fant going off the board here, 171. Obviously, we need quarterbacks on the way back around. Matt Ryan wouldn't correlate with anybody that we have. Daniel Jones would correlate with a Kenny Golladay. Mac Jones would correlate with a Hunter Henry. Ryan Tannehill would somewhat correlate with a Derrick Henry. Jared Goff would go with TJ Hawkinson. We got a lot of options. Okay. And I don't want to say it out loud, but let's just see what falls to us. Let's see what falls to us, and then I'll talk through it. Now, Mike on the clock. This is a team with one tight end. Who is their tight end? They have Goddard at tight end. I feel like Goddard's very awkward in that if you take Dallas Goddard as your one tight end and then you wait this far down draft boards, you probably need to go through and you probably need to go ahead and decide to take 3 of them. At least personally, I would. Okay, Sammy Watkins, 174. It would be so tough if we are looking at Ryan here at 178. Like in reality, like the difference between Matt Ryan and a Mac Jones for me isn't large, especially if we're going to be considering the fact that here with the Matt Ryan, this is a quarterback that we don't have any correlation to. I don't know. But it's going to be very tough. Marvin Jones goes 176. Good for us. I think that was the team that only had one quarterback. Matt Ryan off the board. So we have to go quarterback. We have to take Mac Jones here. It's a no-brainer. Hell, we have Hunter Henry. I mean, it's not that great, but we just need to start taking these quarterbacks. And if we're looking at our wide receiver firepower, how much wide receiver firepower do we realistically have? Tannehill off the board. Sit here and think through this. What I may be doing in this draft that I don't know if I've ever done before, I may draft 4 QBs. I feel like it was so bad, though. Dre says Derek Carr skip was a whiff. Fade Kenneth Walker there. You're probably right, my friend. I probably should have gone through. I probably should have just drafted Derek Carr. I mean, we had Hunter Renfrow. We had Josh Jacobs. Okay, let's think through this. Here's my thought process, ladies and gentlemen. I know. Trust me, I get it. This is a league where out of the 12 teams, 4 of 12 are going to be making the fantasy football playoff tournament. 4 of 12 in this 12-team league. And then once we get to that fantasy football tournament, that's where your production truly does matter. That's where there's the $100,000 up for first. That's where there's that legitimate life-changing money, and the majority of the expected value will be what your team can do in weeks 15, 16, 17. So by taking Watson here, yes, we are probably going to have a lower advance rate in general. But at the same time, this is how we get that cheat code where we can try to catch up with those other teams during that 3-week stretch where they were able to go through. They were able to get a Tom Brady. They were able to get a Dak Prescott. They were able to get a quarterback that can get to 25 to 30 points every single week for 3 weeks in a row. When we decided to take those wide receivers over those players, when we decided to take those running backs, we have to do what we can to catch up. Okay. T-Bank says, how many touchdown passes for Mac Jones this year? Let me see what he had last season. I do think that if you're looking at the efficiency of Mac Jones plus the additional weapons that they decided to bring in, I don't necessarily think that the New England Patriots are guaranteed to skew as run heavy as they did last year. I mean, this was, I believe, the most run heavy offense in game neutral environments last season. I don't necessarily think that's going to be a lock to be the case this upcoming season. So last year for Mac Jones, you only had 521 passing attempts through a 17-game season. An adjusted yards per attempt mark at 7, which was great if we're going to compare that to other rookie quarterbacks. 22 passing touchdowns. I think if we see this team not be the most run-heavy offense in the NFL, if they just skew over to be, say, league average, then all of a sudden we can get these touchdowns up to 30. I think that's a realistic mark for Mac Jones. I mean, he was hyper efficient with the addition of Tyquan Thornton hopefully stretching the field, with Devontae Parker being another quality weapon, with hopefully going into year 2 at the position. I don't know. Let's go through. Let's scroll this back around. We are going to need another quarterback here. And those QBs we're going to be looking at are gross. We are discussing the possibility of taking a Kenny Pickett in the last round, but now that we take Watson, it's almost impossible to take Kenny Pickett. Like, I'd be more willing to just go through, take Trubisky. Like we were saying how I was not a fan of Davis Mills. Even when we took Brandon Cooks, we weren't looking to get the Davis Mills stack in. But I think now that we go with Watson, the Davis Mills pick would make more sense. We have Watson. We're essentially hoping that Mac Jones, Davis Mills can tread water and just get us to the fantasy football playoff stretch. We just need them to tread water, and that is legitimately it. But beyond that, like if we're looking at other players in this range, like Carson Wentz and Zach Wilson are so much more intriguing than Davis Mills, in my opinion. Even if we don't have stacking options with those other guys, we could go with Curtis Samuel, and then we could actually get Carson Wentz. I actually like that idea. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. We're going to take Curtis Samuel here just so we could have access to some of this Washington passing offense. I really like the idea of taking our third quarterback as someone that's going to have a bye week after we get back Deshaun Watson from suspension. We are getting some correlation with Carson Wentz. And I know people are not going to agree with me on this. You can clearly see by the gap in ADP. But I think that Carson Wentz is a significantly better option at quarterback for both real life and fantasy than what you're going to have from Davis Mills. So we're still going to be coming away with an 8 wide receiver approach in this draft. I like this team. We have the elite level running backs, of course. I think we are going to get some running back production in our flex week on a week-to-week basis. I think we're going to have very stable tight end production. It all comes down to, can this team tread water until we get Watson back? If that can happen, I think this team does have a very high ceiling for weeks 15, 16, 17. Hear Me Roar coming out again. Thank you so much, my friend. Says, Half PPR Dynasty Superflex, Saquon Barkley, Traylon Burks, a future second for my A.J. Brown and Elijah Moore. I have DJ Moore, Drake London, Michael Thomas, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Walker, Alexander Madison, and Rashad White. So very interesting team where it doesn't look like we have enough firepower as it stands to go through and be competitive. I just personally don't necessarily see what this trade accomplishes. Like, Barkley's going to be that win now asset. Traylon Burks is going to be that asset for the future. I'd rather have A.J. Brown over... You know what? The value's there where you take the deal. The value's there where you take the deal, but I do think you're going to have to reassess your team, say, in weeks 3, 4, 5, see where it stands, and figure out if you want to push in to be a win-now team, or if you think that it's a roster that's more well-suited for 2023. Okay. Dre says Davis Mills over Carson Wentz. I understand most people are saying that. I think that Carson Wentz has significantly better weapons. I think Carson Wentz is going to be on a better organization. I think that Carson Wentz is honestly probably a better quarterback. I mean, you could go through, if you wanted to make an argument, Mason, you're a clown for saying Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Davis Mills. 100%, you can make that argument. I'm not going to argue with you. You can call me a clown all you want on that front. You're probably right. But if we're taking into consideration the situation that these players are going to be in, you have no weapons for Davis Mills in Houston. You have Brandon Cooks, and that is legitimately it. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, for Carson Wentz in Washington, you're going to have Terry McLaurin, who I want to believe at this point of his respective NFL career is going to be a significantly better option than Brandon Cooks. On top of that, you're going to have Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson's a significantly better wide receiver than Nico Collins. You're going to have Curtis Samuel at wide receiver 3 compared to God knows who the wide receiver 3 ends up being in Houston. You're going to have Logan Thomas compared to Brevin Jordan. Obviously, Logan Thomas coming off a significant injury, but I still like that call. I think the offensive line's better. I think that at the same time, the running backs are better. And in my personal opinion, I think Carson Wentz is probably a better quarterback. Now, you don't have to agree with that opinion, but I think you have to agree that the situation's much better in Washington than what you're going to be seeing in Houston. But I think, how about this? If y'all want another draft after this, we have about 2,000 likes in the live stream. If not, if it's a Friday night, if y'all want to go out and do something else, it's fine. If we hit 300 likes in the live stream, we will fire up another draft after this one. The next draft that we would have would be a $3 private draft. But if y'all don't want to do it, completely fine. Let me read the chat real quick to see how much y'all probably hate that take of my Carson Wentz over Davis Mills. NFL Blitz says, if Curtis Samuel stays healthy, he's a great number 3. Yeah, and that's why I did also like going through and taking that Curtis Samuel pick there at the very end, because we were able to easily correlate that with the Carson Wentz selection. Okay, Scorpion says, Wentz and Jahan Dotson are Bible study buddies. I have not heard of that, my friend. And let's go through. NFL Blitz says Wentz is going to be their best running back. Maybe, I will admit to you, I saw a TikTok earlier today of prime 2017 Carson Wentz scrambling around, making some highlight plays. I was like, it seems like forever ago when that happened. Scorpion says Washington is legit underrated. I hate that I become like a Carson Wentz defender. But I have noticed the narrative centered around Carson Wentz this offseason. I think it's 100% valid. Like, Carson Wentz is never going to be a player that leads you to a Super Bowl. Like, from an NFL standpoint, he's just a bridge stopgap quarterback. But, like, where it stands, like, everybody thinking that he was a limiting factor for Michael Pittman last year and Matt Ryan's going to be some massive upgrade. I don't necessarily buy into that. I don't necessarily buy into that guys like Davis Mills are better than him either. I'll agree. Matt Ryan's a better quarterback, but for him to be this massive upgrade and finally allow Michael Pittman to go from being the wide receiver 28 on a per game basis to a top 10 guy, it's pretty tough for me. And Joel coming out says, is it crazy to go Austin Eckler in the first, Keenan Allen in the second, and Herbert in the 5th as the 3rd overall pick? Would you go Evans or Nick Chubb? Yes, I would go Mike Evans or Nick Chubb over Keenan Allen there in the 2nd round. I'm completely fine with Herbert in the 5th whenever we're going to go through and get this double stack. What I would say is let's go instead and say Austin Eckler in the 1st, then your call between Nick Chubb, Mike Evans at the end of the 2nd. And then if you get Keenan Allen falling back to you at the end of the beginning of the 3rd, then great. Take him there. And then I'd love Justin Herbert. You can even reach on him at the end of the 4th round instead of waiting to see if you could get the beginning of the 5th. But it looks like we're not hitting 300 likes in the live stream. Completely fine, guys. I appreciate all of y'all. I know this live stream looked like it was a lot shorter than it usually is. Wi-Fi issues. I need to get these sorted out. It sucks. We ruined the live stream. But thank you. I appreciate all of y'all. I really hope that you have a great night. I hope you have a great weekend. And I hope that we get to see you with the live stream tomorrow.